Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing me to present the Canadian wine and grape industry to you. And I would like also to thank the organizers for this opportunity. My name is Simone Castellarin. I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia in the Wine Research Center, and I study viticulture here in Canada. Before I start my presentation, I would like to acknowledge that I'm connecting today from the Vancouver Point Grey campus, which sits in the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Now, digging and going into the grape and wine industry in Canada, I would like to start by talking about this publication that occurred in 2013 and mention how climate and climate changing or changes were potentially generated shift in grape and wine production in the world, allowing to produce grapes in northern regions that previously. In this figure, the authors are showing in red color the grape and wine production suitability at current status, meaning current years, with production, for instance, in Europe, in the central and southern part of Europe, and California, and etc. And in the blue color is the forecasted suitability in future years, meaning, for instance, 20, 30 years from now. And this study shows that depending obviously on the climate modeling scenarios, but it shows that there is a general trend toward suitability of grape and wine production in northern regions of Europe, as well as northern regions of North America, including in this part of Canada, British Columbia, where I'm connecting for, and in the eastern part of Canada, the regions of Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. Now, it is actually occurred that the grape and wine industry has been expanding in the past 30 years in Canada. And in these data are showing the economic impact of the industry in our country from 6.7 billions in 2011 to almost a double, 11.5 billions in 2019. And these numbers kept increasing in the past 5 years. So the industry has been expanding exponentially. And currently, we have about 640 wineries, 1,900 grape growers, and about 12,500 hectares of grape production in the country. This generates about 45,200 full-time equivalent jobs in the country. So the grape and wine industry has a significant impact on our economy and has been growing exponentially in the past 20, 30 years. Where do we produce grapes and wine in Canada? Well, here you have a map of Canada. Obviously, the country is huge, but the production occur in regions that are close to the border with the United States, in British Columbia on the Pacific coast, and Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia on the Atlantic, toward the Atlantic coast. The main producing province of Canada is Ontario, with about 7,000 hectares, 53% of the total grape and wine grape surface in Canada, followed by British Columbia with 4,000 hectares and smaller productions in Quebec and Nova Scotia. Of notice here, most of the productions occur close to larger bodies of water, lakes, like in the case of Ontario and British Columbia, and oceans like the Atlantic Oceans in Nova Scotia and the Pacific Ocean in some regions of British Columbia. These large bodies of water help mitigating extreme weather conditions, particularly in the winter months, that will impair otherwise the production of grapevine in these northern parts of the world. I will start describing our industry from the Atlantic coast and I'll end at the Pacific coast. So the first province we have is Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia is obviously here in the Atlantic, on the Atlantic coast of Canada. This is Nova Scotia, and those areas are the grape and wine producing areas of Nova Scotia. Is the smallest producing areas with about 500 hectares, 58 grape growers and 20 wineries. It is a cool climate viticulture area, and we have about 1,000 growing degree days on average, with high precipitation during the growing season, 500, 700 millimeters of water between April and October. These actually will generate some issues I'll talk in the next slide. But another important thing that we have to introduce when we talk about viticulture in Canada is the issues with low temperature during the winter months. So it is possible in particular seasons that we hit temperatures that are around -23, -27 degrees Celsius, like it happened in Nova Scotia in February 2023. Obviously, these temperatures are impairing the Vitis vinifera productions, and in fact, all the Vitis vinifera production that seasons were basically gone due to the low temperature. And so this implies that we might have seasons where we cannot rely on vinifera productions. And this is actually something that I'll show in the next slide, how we deal and mitigate for. But before, I would like to show you a picture of a Nova Scotia winery, for instance, and how vineyards surrounding the wineries are really close by the ocean, and this has obviously a tremendous impact on the climate or microclimate of the vineyard. So as I said before, the low temperatures during the summer, the winter months might impair vinifera production. And in fact, only 30% of production of grapes in Nova Scotia is Vitis vinifera with Chardonnay, Riesling, and Pinot Noir, versus 70% of the production are with hybrids. L'Acadie Blanc, New York Muscat, Maréchal Foch, Léon Milot, Céval Blanc, for instance, and others. So these hybrids allow to a more consistent production over the season, even when climatic constraints during winter months will challenge Vitis vinifera. Other challenges related to productions in Nova Scotia are the high precipitation during the summer months, and this abundant precipitation obviously boosts the impact and increase the vigor of the plants, and so control of the vigor is important in those vineyards, as well as facilitate diseases like downy mildew, black rot diseases, and so precise control of those diseases is very important to guarantee production. I already mentioned cold damages in the winter, in some winter season, as well as in the spring and fall, might be also challenges that our growers in Nova Scotia have to face and deal with. I will end this introduction to Nova Scotia by saying that Nova Scotia is a signature wine, an appellation wine. It's called Tidal Bay, and is a mixture of both hybrid grapes used for that and vinifera grapes in certain percentage that guarantee a sort of uniformity of the product across the province and across the different wineries of the province. Moving moving west, we found Quebec. still in the east side of Canada. We have, after Nova Scotia, we have the Quebec wine region is also a young producing area that started in the 80s. We have about 1,000 hectares, 170 wineries. Quebec City and Montreal are indicating this map, and you see that production are in this area, so the southern part of Quebec. It is a cool viticulture region. We have parts of the province where growing degree days are quite low, 900, 1,000, and parts where summers are warmer, so we got to 1,400 growing degree days. Again, we have high precipitation during the growing season of the grapes, so we'll have to deal also with diseases and contain of vigor and containing the vigor. A major problem, like other provinces, is the low winter temperature. Quebec is a cold province of Canada, and growing vinifera grapes can be challenging. In fact, again, Vitis vinifera varieties are produced in Quebec, but it's 20% of production. We have Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, and Riesling. The majority of production is based on hybrids: Frontenac Noir, Frontenac Blanc, Vidal, Céval Blanc, Marquette, Maréchal Foch. These hybrids can tolerate lower temperatures during the winter. So with severe weather conditions in the winter, we can guarantee a consistent production, or in most of the season, based on the hybrids, even on those seasons where the temperatures are lower than minus 20, minus 23, and Vitis vinifera production will be impaired. It's not uncommon in vineyards to find these geotextile membranes installed on top of the vines during winter time to protect the vines from cold damages. Also, it's important to notice that spring and fall frost can be an issue, and as well the short growing season, being these regions generally cold during the winter and having a late spring, the growing season for the grapes is shorter, so we have to use varieties that have that are early ripening varieties or have a shorter growing cycle. The main production area of Canada is Ontario, and with 7,000 or more than 7,000 hectares, about 500 grape growers and almost 200 wineries. This region, the production of grape and wine, this region generates an economic impact of $5.5 billion. The region is between the 41st and 44th degree latitude north. I'm talking about the wine regions of Ontario. Obviously, Ontario extends much northern. In fact, the production of grapes occur in the southern part of Ontario, in regions of Prince Edward County, Niagara Peninsula, close to the Niagara Falls, and in the Lake Erie North Shore. In these regions, we have growing degree days that are from 1,200 to 1,500, depending obviously on the wine region and the season, and climate that tend to be relatively cold in the winter, but quite warm and humid in the summer. We have 500, 600 millimeters of precipitation between April and October. And we are still dealing with low temperatures. However, being the region milder compared to the, in terms of winter temperatures, compared to the previous two regions, we have a higher production of wheat. Temperatures in Ontario allow a much larger production of Vitis vinifera varieties, with varieties ranging from Pinot Gris, Riesling, Chardonnay, with white grapes, Cabernet Franc, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, etc. for red grapes. However, there is still a significant production of hybrids, 35%, like Baco Noir, Céval Blanc, Vidal, etc. These hybrids guarantee production of grapes and wine also on those rare but present seasons where temperature become too low for a consistent production of Vitis vinifera, and there are large decreases in production from those grapes. So Ontario is very famous for ice wine production, probably one of the most or the most famous region for ice wine production. However, the majority of wines produced are actually table wines, sparkling wines, and interesting production of red wines with a appassimento style, meaning drying the grapes, similar to what happens in northern part of Italy with the Amarone productions. So Ontario has some challenges as well, still related to the cold temperature during the dormant season, with temperature that might hit -20 and lower degrees. So they might affect Vitis vinifera in specific, obviously in just specific seasons. There are also other weather extremes, including very humid or summers, or rainy summers, or dry summers. These extremes in the summer season and winter season actually challenge growers that cannot necessarily rely on consistent growing conditions and have to adapt to those conditions. Obviously, pest and disease control is one of the main challenges, being relatively humid during the summertime. So it is important for grape growers in Ontario to have a proper and consistent pest control. Okay, now the last wine growing region of Canada I'd like to introduce is British Columbia, where I work and live. And British Columbia has produced grapes traditionally, but in the 80s and 90s, there was a major change from production of hybrids into production of Vitis vinifera grapes, like we will see in the slide. And this change also went in pair with a strong increase in the production surface, with 5,000 hectares, about 800 grape growers, more than 300 wineries. These numbers have been increased dramatically, as you see, from 1990, where we had 20 wineries, to 2024, when we had 300 wineries. The wine industry generates economic impact, or has an economic impact of $3.7 billion on our economy. British Columbia has very different climates depending of where we are, and this is consistent also when we compare wine regions. So in the coastal area, Vancouver Island, Fraser Valley, we tend to have lower growing degree days, around 900, 1,000, 1,100 growing degree days. In the interior, particularly in the Similkameen and Okanagan Valley, where the majority of production are, we have much warmer climate. It's a semi-desertic climate that has growing degree days that will range between 1,300 in the northern part to 1,700 in the southern part, where we do produce a lot of red grapes and red wines. Another important feature of several of our wine regions, they are quite dry. So we have very low precipitation, and irrigation is actually necessary in the majority of our vineyards, a vast majority of our vineyards. Without irrigation, we cannot sustain the production, for instance, in the Okanagan Valley, that is the main producing areas of British Columbia. We are still dealing with low temperatures during the winter months. However, those low temperatures are normally not limiting for Vitis vinifera, unless we have some specific seasons where the temperature drops to levels that damage the plant, like I will talk in the next slide. Majority of production is Vitis vinifera, 98% of the grape grown are Vitis vinifera. We produce 100 varieties in total, but the majority of the production are with the varieties I'm listing here: Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Riesling, Gewürztraminer for white, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Syrah for reds. We have still a small production of hybrids: Maréchal Foch, Bacchus, Petit Milot, and we do produce different wine style, mostly table wines, red and white, sparkling wine, and very limited production of ice wine. And this production is actually decreasing in the province. I'm talking about specific to the Icewine production that was more significant 20 years ago and is decreasing in volumes in recent years. We do have challenges, but the challenges are quite probably interesting and expected for some of the people attending this webinar. So one of the major challenges are related to climate and climate change during the summer months, including drought. Is a very dry area. We need irrigation. Without irrigation, we cannot grow grapes. And we have very frequent heat waves that will actually have demand more water to use on irrigation. A main issue is smoke taint on our wine in some seasons, or in some of our wines, and this smoke taint issue is related to forest fires. There are frequent forest fires in the summer months, particularly close to the main region of production, the Okanagan Valley, and these forest fires that sometimes are close by vineyards might affect then the quality of the wine. And we have scientists and growers and working toward mitigating this issue when it occurs. Pest disease are related to trunk and virus disease, and there is actually a replanting program in place to get rid of material that is affected by these diseases. And in rare seasons, but we do have issues with extreme cold during the winter years. We actually were quite lucky in the past 30 years that we had very few seasons with damages due to cold temperatures, but we had very bad years in 2022 and 2023, with production being decreasing by 50% in 2022 and decreasing almost by 98% in 2023. So our industry has been strongly hit by cold damages in 2022 and 2023, and is actually in the process of recovering from those bad seasons. Before concluding my presentation, I'm showing this slide about the Okanagan Valley, where in British Columbia we produce 85% of our grapes and wine. Again, very dry and warm area, close to large bodies of water that are lakes. And some studies have been showing and describing this increase in temperature we observe. This is related to climates in Kelowna. Kelowna is a city in the Okanagan Valley and that is surrounded by vineyards. And in this study are showing, authors are showing that from 1970 to 2020, we had an average increase of 2 degrees Celsius in temperature during the summer, during the growing season. And this is also, again, probably hard to believe, but also this increasing temperature generates a high frequency of heat waves with maximum temperatures that are often reaching 35 degrees Celsius or 37 or 40 degrees Celsius. Here is an analysis we have done from historical weather data, and this data relate to this last season, 2024. In 2024, in the southern part of the Okanagan Valley, we had 20 days, almost 20 days in July above 35 degrees Celsius, which are a temperature where the physiology of the grapes is impaired, and 70 days for 37 degrees Celsius, and 4 days above 40 degrees Celsius with maximum temperature. So we do have growers have to cope with very high temperature in the summertime, temperatures that might impair grape production, and they are exploring and studies ways to mitigate the effects of this high temperature on their vineyards. And the same is in August, with several instances where we have maximum temperature above those temperatures. So quite unusual to for a country like Canada, or maybe, but actually we do have regions that are experiencing extremely high temperature, and high temperature and drought are an issue also in Canadian viticulture, particularly, as I said before, in British Columbia. I'd like to conclude this presentation by summarizing what has been said. So grape and wine production have been growing exponentially in the past 30, 40 years. Climatic conditions across in the provinces where we produce grapes are favorable for Vitis vinifera productions. Not always. Not always. In fact, we have seasons where winter temperatures limit the production of Vitis vinifera. But as I shown, we are producing Vitis vinifera in the 4 major provinces. In one of them, British Columbia, and is almost 100% of Vitis vinifera. In Ontario is about 65–70%. Canadian Icewine is a signature wine, a signature product for Canada. Is well renowned worldwide. However, our industry is not only Icewine. Actually, it's a minor production. We produce table grapes and sparkling, table wines and sparkling wines, and these are produced across the four provinces. Despite climate change or increasing temperatures have facilitated an expansion of our industry, and so more vineyards have been planted, and more Vitis vinifera varieties have been planted in the past 20–30 years. We do still have issues with climate extremes, and these issues occur both in the winter time and summertime, like I've explained before. Despite the diversity of the industry across the country due to the different microclimates, or the different climates and microclimates, and conditions, I would like to mention that the Canadian grape and wine industry has a strong commitment towards sustainability across the provinces, and this is certainly a feature or characteristic of our industry to explore and study agroecological solutions for grape and wine production. I would like to acknowledge people who have helped me assembling this presentation from different provinces, including Ruth King, Katarina Vucic, and all the growers organization and consulting companies that have published material that I've used for preparing this presentation, from Nova Scotia to Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. Thank you very much for the attention. I cannot be there today for the question time. However, here is my email, simone.castellarin@ubc.ca. If you have any question about this presentation, if you are interested in exploring more about Canadian grape and wine, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.